John, it's great to talk to you. I can remember the days when you used to travel down from Yorkshire and take part in Voice in the Wilderness. In fact, you presented Voice in the Wilderness on Revelation TV.
Yes,
and I was thinking, in those days, you were so good and you gave such sane and sensible advice. Here you are. I've never talked to anyone in a coffin before, John.
Yes, I know. Great. It's great to talk to you, Gordon, in Revelation Television. And yes, I used to travel down every Tuesday. I used to travel down about 4 hours drive to the Revelation Television studios and do a 3-hour live program from 10 in the evening till 1 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd drive all the way back home again.
That's right.
And yeah, that's where I cut my teeth in how to do this. I wouldn't be doing this if it hadn't been for Revelation TV.
Well, we were delighted, and I know so many people were helped by the advice that you gave.
Oh,
but John, here you are, 72 hours in a coffin. Before we get on to the reason why, I can imagine that many of our viewers are concerned about the practicalities. I mean, are you actually going to eat and drink? And what about your ablutions while you're in the coffin?
My ablutions. Yes, I'm eating and drinking. I've had a chicken curry down here. I had chips and gravy. I have my cup of tea here beside me. I have a tube just up over my right hand here. I have a tube that's 9 inches in diameter that's going to the surface. So that's where the fresh water and food comes down. But I also have down at the bottom of the coffin, 8 feet away from me, down the bottom, I've got another tube that's 9 inches in diameter. So I'll put it this way. Food comes in the tube beside me, and it goes back out the tube down the end from me.
Well, that's a relief. Well done, John. Thanks for explaining
Yes, it is a relief, absolutely.
But John, it's not that you're just an eccentric. You're doing this for a purpose. Tell us why you're doing it.
Yes, I am, Gordon. I'm aware that it's a crazy idea. The reason I'm doing this is I'm a former drug addict and alcoholic. I was homeless in London for many years. I've had a liver transplant. I've had cancer twice. I've had hepatitis C from dirty needles, and I have had to face death on a number of occasions myself, having overdosed over 20 times when I was an addict and survived it all. I know what it is to face death straight in the eye, and I'm just so grateful to be alive. But since I've been a Christian for the last, and since I've been clean and sober for 26 years, I worked on the streets all over the UK and Ireland and in different parts of the world. And I've just been attending so many funerals, particularly recently, Gordon, funerals of young men and young women who are dying prematurely through accidental overdose, through suicide, through hanging themselves, and through taking overdoses on purpose. And I've had to comfort the mums and the dads and the families of these unfortunate people who have died. And it's absolutely heartbreaking. And I've been desperate to get the word out to these people as much as I can before they end up in a premature grave. So I've toyed with different ideas and tried different ideas of reaching more people. But I still wasn't reaching enough, and I was been praying and passionate about thinking ideas to reach more and more people using media like yourselves at Revelation TV. And I came up with this idea of stopping people coming into an early grave by actually getting into a grave myself and telling them, stay out of here. Learn how to navigate darkness in your life. Humble yourself enough to ask God to help you, and let people like me and others assist you while you're going through your depression and your darkness, and help us lead you to the light. So I decided to make a coffin. And this coffin is 8 foot long by 3.5 feet wide by 3.5 foot tall. So I'm here sitting in this coffin. I'm 4 foot underground in East Belfast, beside the church, Willowfield Parish Church here in East Belfast. And I'm live streaming while I'm speaking to you at Revelation TV live. And,
so John, if some people are watching and are saying, how do I get in touch with this live stream? Tell us how we do that.
You can get in touch with me through my website, which is walkingfree.org, or through my Facebook public profile page, which is John Edwards Walking Free. And we're live on there.
So, John, you know from your days on Voice in the Wilderness that people watch TV who are desperate to be set free. And certainly we continue to get emails from so many people who are saying, I'm a drug addict, or my relative is a drug addict or is into drink and I want to be set free. What advice would you give to someone today? What would you say to them?
I would advise people, first of all, they need to admit they have a problem. I mean, that sounds obvious, but a lot of people live in denial. They don't admit the depth of the problem. They've got to admit that they've got a problem and that it's serious, and that because of it, your life is unmanageable. And then they have to realize as well that it's only through the help of a power greater than themselves, God, that they can get set free. And they need to begin the process of setting themselves, they need to begin the process of handing the care of their life over to God. And we at Walking Free Ministries and you guys at Revelation TV, they can get in touch with us whenever they need to. And we can put them in touch with other professional Christian organizations like rehabilitation centers, or even if they live near us, we'll come and we'll meet them. I'll meet people in cafes or in hotels, and we'll point them in the right direction. We'll pray with people. We'll lead them in prayer to Christ. We will help get them into rehab. Sometimes we help them find housing. Sometimes we've taken them into our house to detox them off heroin or cocaine or crack or prescription drugs or whatever. We do whatever we can to help people, and we do it free of charge.
Well, that's good. Thank you so much for sharing that. Many of the people I'm sure who are watching, John, are parents and grandparents who can see their children or grandchildren or nieces or nephews who are struggling. And often you don't know what's the right thing to say. When do you speak and when don't you speak? What advice would you give?
Well, I think that one needs a lot of wisdom. It's not only when and what you would say, but it's the right person that needs to speak to the individual as well. Mm-hmm. So if you've got an individual who's suicidal or has a drug problem, the possibility of them taking an accidental or an on-purpose overdose can be heightened to quite a degree. So you need to make sure that the person who speaks to them, that they will actually listen to them. And sometimes a family member is not the right person. So they might need to get a local professional or even the local minister or maybe a youth leader to come down and speak to the particular individual that's struggling. And then you have to know, once you have the right person to speak to them, then you need to know when the green light is there. Sometimes it's a red light that says, don't speak now. Sometimes, like a traffic light, it's an amber light that says, wait a little while. And at other times, it's a green light that now is the moment. You've got to go and you've got to speak to that person ASAP, as soon as possible, so that you can rescue them. Because sometimes if you leave it too long, these people can die.
Yeah. Yeah. John, your story is a remarkable one of what God has done in your life, and it's such an encouragement to so many.
Thank you.
If I said just encourage us this morning with another story of someone who, through the work that you're doing, has been set free from their addiction, can you tell us one?
I can tell you a recent one we did just a few weeks ago up in Glasgow in Scotland. I won't give the person's name, but we were up in a particular part of Glasgow, quite a rough area. And I've also got the world's biggest syringes, 33 feet long by 6 foot in diameter. It's another thing just to draw attention to get people to come to us so we can speak to them. But I do outreach in these different rough areas, and we pick up rubbish in the neighborhood. And when we're doing so, we talk to people. And I ended up in a hairdressing shop, and I was talking to this guy. He was actually the guy who was in there was he had some issues himself, but he told me about a guy who was living under a bush in the local park, and he was homeless. And this hairdresser asked me if I could help this guy. So I said, I'll do what I can. And I left his hairdressers and I come out, and I met my wife Tricia. She was there, and she had actually bumped into this exact same homeless person. And my wife Tricia said, oh John, we bumped into this homeless person. She said, I've arranged to have lunch with him later. So we went to this cafe, and the homeless person came in. We paid for lunch, and we paid for 3 meals a day for the homeless person for 2 days so he could come back in there. And I told him about rehab. I told him the gospel. I shared with him what God did in my life. And I told him that God would set him free if he was prepared to seek God himself. So he said he was going to think about it. So I actually let him sleep in the park that night, Gordon, because I needed to let him feel the depth of his surroundings and make his own mind up if he wanted to change. Because we have to let people hit the rock bottom. So I did. The next day he met us in the cafe again, and he said he wanted to change his life. And we had terrible psoriasis all over his hands. His knees were so bad with psoriasis and the cold that when he walked they cracked and his knees were bleeding. Mm-hmm. So he said he wanted to go to rehab. So I had already prearranged a bed for him in a rehab. So I took him to the hospital. I got cream for his psoriasis. I took him shopping and we bought him clothes and we bought him pajamas and got him toiletries and razors and everything. And then our ministry, we put him up in a 4-star hotel that night, Gordon.
Wow.
It was absolutely beautiful. And my wife, I waited outside. Tricia brought him up. We got him a Chinese takeaway, a big Chinese takeaway, and we put him in this really, you know the way you go into some hotels and they have buns and cakes waiting for you? It was one of those hotels. And he went in, the homeless guy went in, all his knees caked in blood, and he showered, and he washed himself, and he put the cream on his psoriasis. And he stayed there. He said he thought he was in heaven. Right. And he had already invited Christ into his heart. The next morning I picked him up. I remember, I'll never forget the picture of him. He was having breakfast in this 4-star hotel in his new clothes. But he still had his big woolly hat on in this 4-star hotel. And I brought him to the train station and we sent him down to the rehab. He couldn't read or write. And we prayed that he would get to the rehab safely. We got a phone call a little while later from a lady on the train. And we had given him our phone number. She rang and she said, "My name is so-and-so." She gave her name. And she said, "I'm a Christian. I'm sitting on this train." And she said, "God put in my heart to go over and speak to this man. And it turns out that you helped him and you're sending him to a rehab." Wow. He can't read and write, but she said, "We're going to make sure he gets into the rehab center." So he went into that rehab center and he came off heroin and booze and he was completely set free. And that's one of the latest stories of the people that we work with.
Amen. God is doing it one person at a time. Well, John, some people will think you're crazy, but you would say you're radical for Jesus Christ.
I kind of kid on. Some people call me a nut, and I say I might be a nut, but I'm secured to the right bolt.
John, it's great to talk to you today on Revelation TV. Thank you so much for doing that. And I hope that I'll be able to talk to you when you come out of the grave. Absolutely. And you can share some more of some of the experiences that have happened. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you so much, Gordon. I give my love to everybody down at Revelation TV and all your viewers.
God bless you. Thanks, John.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.